This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 144.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. Thank you guys for being here. We have a great guest today. There wasn't really a topic that we wanted to discuss. Like, we didn't want to talk about demos. We didn't talk about anything specific. We just wanted to talk about him. And his name is Mike Orth, coming all the way from Ireland. He's our first guest from Ireland, so I'm trying to get as international as possible. So if you have any guests in places that I've never heard of, I'd like to meet them. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed the talk. Even though we didn't have any specific topic that we wanted to discuss, he dropped gems left and right. He talked about worries that we all have. So I really hope you enjoyed the show. I really, listen to it. Let me know what you think. And speaking of let me know what you think, I am doing something where I'm giving out 3 books from Tony Mado's books about proof of concepts. And you know what? I initially I didn't know when I'm gonna decide who's the winner is, but the winner will be picked on my wife's due date, which is January 29th. So if you want to be part of this, all you have to do is leave a rating and review on any platform that you listen to this podcast. Take a snapshot of that rating and review and post it to your LinkedIn so I know who it is. Tag me so I'm actually aware that it happened. And I would love to. I'm doing this because this is useful for me. It's also useful for the people who actually look at reviews and want to decide which podcast to listen to. And it helps Tony because his book is great. And it helps whoever gets the book. So do that. And you know what? Let's just jump into the show at this point. Good afternoon, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm good. So we do this a lot. Like when you join a call, we have an introduction. We talk for like 5 minutes, and then we press record and we repeat everything. And I'm used to it. Benny's used to it by now. But it seems like every guest. Like, you already asked me that question. Why are you still asking me the same question? So let's start with that. The same question we asked. Who are you? What do you do? Where you're from? And why are you here?
My name is Mike Orth. I work for Dell Technologies. I work in the Customer Solution Center there, and I'm based out of Limerick in Ireland.
Okay. And
so my role then is a pre-sales role, helping essentially salespeople, customers, partners when essentially there's an opportunity when customers want to change something, right, about their infrastructure or their business, really. My role and is mainly focused around data center and virtualization, so VMware-based technologies. If I was to deep into what I do, it's mostly around HCI and the appliance kind of concept of solving that problem. So I do a lot of stuff around hyperconverged technology, which a lot of people don't know. So that's probably going a little bit too deep.
Well, that's fine. Basically, you work with IT infrastructure organizations, right? You help IT for different organizations with their like data center. There's a brief solution, brief summary. Okay. So I have a lot of questions about, before we get to my actual questions, I'd like to know a little bit about your history, how you got there. Seems like an interesting path.
I suppose it's an unusual path. I was born in the U.S. I went to a university in Maryland, a state university, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do way back then when I was 18, 19, 20 years old. And I got a degree in philosophy, right? And once I graduated, I had a piece of paper and I didn't really want to go into education or go to like the graduate program around that way, master's or whatever. So I ended up traveling to Ireland. Now, before I did that, I got the money together by taking an IT job. That's a bit of a strange one in that I sent out about 100 CVs via fax back then, right?
Started. What's a fax?
Yeah, I know. My internet was green to begin with, right? It was a green screen kind of thing, and faxing. Yeah, that sort of experience, very short experience, that 1 year, I realized that IT was kind of the thing that I'm actually good at: solving problems, doing upgrades, working with technology. I was comfortable in that space. So when I moved to Ireland, I kind of explored that same path in IT. So I spent at least, I don't even count anymore, at least 10 years of the start of my career in various IT roles, right? Man in the van. I did a stint of that for a couple of years. I worked for, a global uh, company, um, uh, supporting their internal IT processes, and I was happy doing that for a very long time. I never ever presented in front of an audience. I had no experience on any sort of stage. I had no need for it in my role. So it was just doing the day job of understanding technology, fixing things internally. And it wasn't until later that I kind of discovered that sales was where I should have been to begin with, right?
Okay. So just so you know, while you're talking, Benny and I are frantically writing all our questions. I think we listed like 6 questions already. Maybe we'll start with this one. Uh, why did you go into philosophy to begin with?
Oh, now you're stabbing at the heart of me. I would say now that I started off on one path in the US anyway, in terms of a university. You want to come out the other side with a bachelor's degree, and how you get there doesn't have to be, you know, deep diving into a particular topic. You can't pick, like my kids now coming up in Europe, they have to decide that they want to be like a quantity surveyor when they start college, and then they follow that path that gets them there. For me, it's more of a generalist education. And so I slowly over the years, as that 4 year clock in university ticked down, I had less and less options for the amount of credits I was earning. And philosophy became the one that, all right, you can actually complete this 4 year degree and get a philosophy degree. And so that's how I ended up there. It's not some sort of revelation. Now, I would say that my father also had a philosophy degree. So I'd say that kind of maybe lent me in that direction.
Okay. It's interesting because like I've worked with other people who didn't have an engineering degree. Like someone had a business computer degree. I don't know what that means, business computer degree, in Lebanon. But like back in 2000, when people were like getting jobs at that time, they were hiring people who didn't have any engineering degree whatsoever because there was a shortage of people. And it seems that
Yeah.
people don't need an actual engineering degree to understand how networking and how data centers work. But these days, like, you kind of have to have engineering degree to be able to get a job with specific companies. So times have changed a little bit. Benny, you had
Pretty
a follow-up, I
Yeah, I
think.
guess it's a comment, I suppose, maybe a question afterwards as well. But it is pretty wild, that whole idea about having like 19, 18-year-olds have to, like, right out of high school after they've been kind of coddled their whole lives, to have to figure out exactly what they want to do before they get into university. Otherwise, they kind of get into their degree and potentially waste 4 years in something they hate, and then have to either redo it or end up in a career they hate. So I kind of really like that idea, or that methodology you went about it, to just kind of get that just get the understanding, and maybe fulfill your interests, or education rather, based upon interests. But also, with your dad having had a philosophy degree as well, like, it's clearly a proof point that it can, like, it's a good degree to have. So so why not kind of go after expanding yourself rather than kind of pigeonholing yourself into a specific role. But yeah, no, it's that makes sense. I suppose a quick question, actually, though, with respect to your philosophy degree, in your role, and just throughout your career in general, especially going into IT, and then from everything that's then progressed into, how has the philosophy degree, or that state of mind that a philosophy degree kind of shapes, how has that, I guess, played a part in your role or in your career?
That's interesting. Yeah. I think the one thing that I took out of that 4 year degree was always question everything,
Hmm.
right? And I really loved Plato and Socrates on that side of the house, right? Plato's Republic, for example, was a book I really liked. He talks about the philosopher kings and things like that. The best leader is somebody who doesn't actually want power and doesn't want to lead. I realize the timing of this podcast, we don't want to go down that path. I don't want to talk about politics. I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about religion. But it's that whole ability to listen, right? And I think in sales, not going into any sales engagement already with the answer, you're really on a winner to be able to help your customers if you have that attitude.
Yeah, that's a really smart way of looking at it. Yeah, it definitely helps. I'd imagine from a customer perspective, if you kind of have a salesperson coming in who kind of seems like a know-it-all and isn't taking into account your specific use case, your specific considerations, that could definitely come off as quite arrogant and certainly not as effective as somebody who's actually caring about finding a solution for that customer specifically. So that's a really good way of going about it.
I think if you're 15 minutes into your sales presentation and the customer hasn't spoken, or probably less than 15, 5 minutes, you may be wasting everyone's time.
True.
Yeah. Speaking of a know-it-all, I had a sales guy that I worked with that when he worked with customers, he looked like a bumbling guy who didn't know much. He was the sharpest guy I knew, but it was a way for him to make himself look like, hey, I'm interested in learning about you. I'm not this know-it-all. Please educate me. So it's an interesting technique to use. I don't know if I could use it, but it worked for him.
And even for new, like I'm a relatively new SE just in general, I suppose, compared to a lot of the guests that we have on the show. And I know that when I first got into the career, like you kind of first get into sales tracks, or I guess talking tracks about different things. And at least from my initial impression, I thought that it would be better to kind of to essentially make assumptions to what the customer wants or needs, because it'll show in their eyes that that you already know that you can help them and things like that. But turns out that it's actually way better to perhaps be that bumbling fool, or to be that person that's genuinely curious about solutions, because from a customer's perspective, again, if they're seeing that you really care about finding a solution for their specific requirement, it's far more effective than you just prescribing things based upon generalist solutions that have been come up with in the past. So that whole idea of really listening and truly trying to find a solution for that customer, cannot be overstated how important that is.
Have you ever presented to a customer or got you're in a situation where you're in front of a customer and you realize that maybe at least one of the customers, if it's an audience, for example, small audience of customers, at least one of them knows more than you already?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I tend to look for those, the grenade, I call them the grenade thrower. There's always going to be somebody on the customer side, and they've got their whole dynamic going where they need to demonstrate that they're the most intelligent person in the room. And you do not want to be in conflict with that person. You want to elevate them immediately. And they tend to then, as soon as they feel that they've established that relevance, that's all they really needed out of the whole call. They may not even listen to the rest of the conversation because that's salesy. I don't really care kind of thing. And somebody, it might be somebody else who actually makes the decision or, interacts with you. But I love to avoid the grenade throwers softly.
Yeah, I struggled with that so much at the start of my career so I work in test and measurement. Basically, companies like Cisco and Nokia and Juniper, they create standards that like other companies should follow, and then we do equipment to test those standards for them. So they wrote the standards. They know it more than I do. And I'm a generalist SE, so I cover a wide variety of technologies, whereas they focus on that specific technology. And whenever I'd go present and they'd say something that I didn't initially I'd always get defensive and try to defend my product. Sooner, like not very soon, actually, it took me a while. I'm kind of slow like that. I realized that, hey, maybe I should just, like, they wrote the standard, maybe I should ask them what they think versus me trying to defend my product. Maybe we can learn something together. And that kind of changed the whole dynamic of the presentations that I'm in, because I'm no longer confrontational. I'm not defending. I'm not defensive anymore. I'm not getting insulted by them talking about my product. Let's just have a discussion and we'll figure it out and go forward. So yeah, that's helped me a little bit in my career in the past couple of years versus the first few years as an SE. So
yeah, And I guess it's just that insight in general. I mean, that's a really good, like a really smart insight, I suppose, that really comes with experience, just to be able to, to be, well, one, to be genuinely curious and to really work with a customer to find a solution, but also to be able to identify, those grenade throwers in the room and kind of work with them to be able to have them become a champion from a grenade thrower. I don't know, maybe that came naturally to you, perhaps not, but you did mention that you started off never presenting to audiences, and then all of a sudden you got thrown into it, and now coming up with insights like that. What was that whole, I guess, journey like, from never having presented to audiences to being where you are now?
So when I left IT, I went into a pre-sales role, but it was actually more of a behind the scenes role. It was working as part of a team that puts together a platform that is a demo platform, right? So, when salespeople want to go to a customer site and demonstrate a very large, heavy, complex, expensive piece of kit, they need to throw one into the boot of their car, bring it to the site, set it up, and then do their demonstrations. Now that's really old now. Everything is software now. We don't tend to need to do that kind of thing anymore. But that was what the team was doing, was taking those expensive resources, putting them all under one roof, maintaining them, and establishing a platform that allowed anybody in the company to book it for a short period of time and use it as a demo platform to deliver an experience to a customer, essentially. Now, it could be not just for a customer, it could be a learning for a salesperson on how to improve their demo or whatever. And I enjoyed that. I worked a good few years in that role. But the best part of that role was when we supported events and we took the platform on the road to an event, and we might be, when you see the person up on stage presenting and then they do a 5-minute demo, in front of a large audience, it's our platform that they might be using. I realized that the person on the stage is where I wanted to be, not necessarily the behind the scenes setting up the actual demos and maintaining them.
Okay. Is the person on the stage getting all the credit for the demo, or do you guys get some credit?
No, actually, very much the platform is and it deserves a lot of credit. It has grown from a couple of tens of dozens of customers per year to a really, really big number of customers come through the platform every year now. It is, I don't want to name names or do anything. That team is incredible. It's still based on a very small amount of people that initially developed it, and they are continually innovating with newer technologies to help improve that experience for salespeople and for customers. So it's really exciting. It's a whole story in itself, but I left that team to be more customer facing so that I could be more in front of real live customers, using that platform maybe if I need to actually speak directly to customers. So I like that. It was actually, I think I said that in my notes, it was a job swap. There was a fellow that couldn't continue on in the role, customer facing, because he was moving his house, and they looked for volunteers so that he didn't have to quit, and we just straight up swapped roles. So I was based physically in the lab. What used to it used to matter that you had to be able to come to the building. It doesn't anymore. Everything I do now is over Teams or Zoom. But at the time, that's why I did the swap.
Okay, Benny, go ahead. You had to follow up.
Yeah, fair. So I guess just about the job swap, and maybe I missed it. Sorry, I was typing as you were talking. But did you have to almost recognize the person kind of in the role that you wanted to swap into prior to, and also recognize that he or she wanted to swap into your role before that whole process took place? Or was it just very, was it very, I don't know, serendipitous how that worked out, or was there a little bit more massage that had to take place?
It was pretty serendipitous. When I was working on that demo platform team, we have a lot of products that we sell. The gold star of that would be storage, right? I didn't work in the storage area. It was the most popular. If you think about it, it's probably one of the most expensive solutions at the time and the most difficult to bring to a customer site. So obviously there was a huge demand in that area. The areas I worked in maybe were a little bit less demanding, just as complex. It just didn't get used as much. So I felt kind of like, if I'm not number one and working on the most, beneficial or most difficult thing, I felt a little bit undervalued and not as interested in my day-to-day job. I wanted to be on the best thing, but I also was friends with the person who was, leading that area. So I wasn't going to fight with them. There wasn't room for two of us. So when I saw the opportunity to swap roles, I just jumped at it. So it was definitely serendipitous when I heard about it. And yeah, there was no need for a second interview or anything. I just straight up did the swap. Didn't mean I was any good at the job, right? I came into it, or again, zero, no presentation experience, no on stage, no audience, nothing.
Fair. So sorry, if you don't mind, just because you mentioned that now, and because you mentioned a little bit earlier too that it's kind of seeing the person up on the stage and wanting to be in that role. And obviously you're talking about now being in that role or having been in that role and obviously got good at it. What did you do to prepare for it, and what did you do to practice to get yourself up to the point where you could confidently go up against it or go up in front of an audience and present the solution?
Wow, yeah, that took years. And I'm still trying to be better at that, right? I wouldn't say I'm the best at it either. I'm always looking to improve in that area. I guess what I did wrong initially was, and this is probably coming from that IT background, I thought that everything needed to be perfect and exact and scripted and line for line. If you make a mistake, that's the end of the credibility. You are ruined.
Yep.
So I approached it thinking I needed to absorb all this knowledge and be ready to spit it out word for word perfectly. It's kind of a reason I don't particularly like webinars, for example, because I don't feel like you can get the audience reaction and the participation necessarily if the camera is off, if you don't have eye contact, if you don't know if this is landing or not, if you don't know if your joke is being laughed at, there's really no way to know if you should keep going or not. So yeah, my initial starting point was just spitting out all my information as much as possible and hoping that what I told them was exactly what they wanted to know, but not ever ask them what they want to know.
Nice. So how did you figure out that you should ask them what they want to know?
Well, actually, we got some training inside of our own organization from a professional kind of presenter, speaker, teacher, right? I can't. It escapes me the name of the. It's a well-recognized
Demo to win?
No, I don't think so. I'm not going to remember it now, but
okay, that's fine.
I should research that. But they kind of do C-level kind of presenting and stuff like that, right? Yep. And they came in and they basically did a couple of days of showing us what good was, but also having us practice on our own team members, just the presenting skills, right?
Yeah.
And my biggest takeaway from that was I never went into any session with an agenda. I would just go in and empty the brain right there in the audience. And she was like, I remember when they were training, they said, look, you're really great at talking. You love talking, but you don't actually get to any point. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're most confident when you're having a conversation, but you need to put some structure into it. And it was the agenda. And I've taken that away ever since. Every time I'm engaged with a customer, we do what's called a scoping call. How can I help you, the salesperson, the partner, or the customer? What can I do to help? And we develop an agenda from that. And then afterwards becomes the real session, which follows that agenda, essentially. And without an agenda, I'm lost.
I had the same mistake initially. And my boss, so we had a teammate in Toronto that wasn't doing great. And they kept flying him out to Toronto, to Ottawa, and my boss would come up and like he'd do a training for both of us together because kill two birds with one stone. I was still a rookie as well, and the first thing he said after I did a presentation is like, Ramsey, what's your goal? What's your agenda? Like, well, you told me to talk about this, so I talked about that. He's like, yeah, but you always have to have some form of like agenda, 3 points that you're going to talk about. It doesn't have to be official. It doesn't have to be on a PowerPoint slide, but you have to have it in your brain. Like, what's the transformation you're trying to get to from the customer side? And that kind of shifted the way I think as well about doing demos or even webinars. By the way, a quick tip about webinars. It is hard to be the only person on the camera and talking for an hour straight and crickets on the other end. So what we've been doing at my work is we've been having a teammate or a colleague jump on the call with us so that they would interject every once in a while, or they would have conversations. They would invite questions as well. And that way, at least if I say a joke, at least one person is laughing versus having nothing on there. I don't know if it actually does anything for the audience, but as a presenter, it makes me feel better. It makes me feel a little bit more confident. And hopefully that translates over to the listeners as well.
I think it does something for the audience. It's very hard to measure, and I don't ask every time a session comes up, but I've done similar, not done a lot of webinars, but when we have done some, I try and structure it that we have two people if we can.
Yeah.
But yeah, and even on a sales call with say Teams or Zoom, I'll always tell at the start, please don't everybody go on no camera. You can't force a customer, but I can force one of the account team. I can say, lad, you need to have your camera on, especially when I do slide 7, joke 3, or whatever. You know what I mean? I need you. And if they use me once, they tend to come and use me again, and they know the joke and they still laugh. It is very helpful.
There's a sound thing like, that kind of, yeah. we try to help each other out the best way possible, but we're not very good actors.
No.
Sorry, just very quickly, if I may, just along the lines of those points, I think there's some science out there too when it comes to presenting, whether it be for webinars or demos, that when there's just changes in whether it be inflections or tone or whatever in someone's voice, or between two people, it's way easier to do that because people just have natural different ways of speaking. It kind of perks the audience up a little bit more than if you just have one person droning on for the whole time. Having kind of those ebbs and flows of two people talking and the interactions and kind of, again, the different ways that they speak kind of pick up people's attention a little bit more. So definitely an effective technique, even if it is a petty ha ha ha.
Also, a quick note about the proof of concept teams. Like you mentioned that that's the team you joined initially. I don't know what's called. What was the team called, if you don't mind sharing?
No, it's okay. It was actually called the demo team.
Demo team. Okay. So in
and demo, right? Well, you made a good point, because proof of concept is one thing, kind of a sales engagement or pre-sales engagement is another thing, and then to me, demo falls into another bucket.
Yeah.
More similar to the webinar sort of thing.
Yeah. So companies like Cisco, Nokia, Juniper, they still have those teams that have to carry these large equipments, because although things are virtual, you can go virtualize it. A lot of the core networking is still on big routers and stuff. So if you're interested, I'm talking to the audience here, if you're interested in getting a sales engineering role, that team, whether it's anywhere, is a great team to actually join, because you get some firsthand experience. And Benny, like you had a question that I'm gonna steal because you haven't asked it yet.
You do that every episode, I think.
I try. He comes up with good questions. I just make him sound like my own. So what was your first experience presenting to an audience like?
Oh, what was it like?
The nerves, like, what was your thought process?
Man, I don't know. That's a long time ago now, but it was fear and nervousness and never wanting to leave any gaps for questions. Just get on, do your bit, and get off as quickly as possible, and hope that somebody gives you a clap at the end. And that's it.
Like you mentioned, it wasn't great. Like you just went out and did a brain dump.
That didn't sound great, did it?
Well, I think we all start like that. The thing is that we have to start, right? I think that's the big thing, because a lot of people don't start because they want it to be perfect, and kind of like you, but you actually went up and did it and learned throughout your career. A lot of people just don't do it because they don't want to, like, they're afraid to not be perfect. But even when you think you are, you're probably not. So that's just my 2 cents there. Um, you mentioned you've been working for a big company like Dell. um, I've worked for big companies where they have millions of products. Maybe not millions, that's an exaggeration, but there's a lot of products. How is it working for a company like that from your end? And how is it having so many different products that you may have to know about, maybe not necessarily be an expert in, but know about and still, sell your product?
Yeah, it is a challenge, right? So, and that is another thing I made a mistake with at the start was, um, say, technology shifts and changes over time, and based on customer interest, it's either successful uh, product or technology, or it never goes anywhere. So being kind of, this is going to sound maybe a little bit strange, but caring about a particular product too much may limit you in not seeing, you know, the fact that maybe what customers are looking at somewhere else is actually better, right? Or you need to, and I've heard it on your own podcast many times. You need to be aware of the competitive environment that's out there. You need to know what your customers are hearing from other solutions. You need to not necessarily battle that or react against it, but I suppose be realistic in that if your product is never going to be able to do that thing and the customer loves that thing that the other product does, you're on a road to nowhere, right? So like the road behind me there in my Zoom. Uh, but yeah, so I guess maybe being on one product that you're working on now, but always looking for where is there another one, and is that one going to become big, and has it just not taken off yet? So I try and keep one foot on a current product and another foot on something that maybe I'm rooting for or hoping will take off, so that I can either do both or shift over to the new one if it does absolutely take off. Now, it happens to be the case that the product I've been on since 2014-ish. So I can't believe it's 6 years. Like, we used to talk about it as being, this whole new innovation and, cutting edge and all that. And only about a month ago, I heard a salesperson kind of introduce it as a legacy solution sort of a thing. And I was like, wait a second now, it's not legacy at all. But it's just, the time that the fact is I've been working in that area for so long that, you're seeing customers come around a second time who might not have bought it the first time, or having to refresh from a first purchase. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting.
Would that be considered a legacy product just because it's old, or is a legacy product is when you have a newer one and this one's
Yeah,
gonna?
I think so. I think that was the way this salesperson used the word. To me, I had never heard it applied to the product that I was supporting before. Um, I was surprised when they said it that way.
What did you do? Did you correct them in the middle of a call, or did you wait until after the call?
I'm pretty sure I think it was during a scoping call. So I kind of laughed out loud and I said it like, and they said, oh yeah, well, I don't mean legacy. Um,
Oh, it's because you
they
worked
meant to
perfectly.
say something like established.
Yeah, there you go. There's a big difference. Legacy sounds to make like sounds it look like it's so old that you're gonna come up with a new product really soon, whereas established just means like, you know it's good. It's proven. Okay, good.
What a wild perspective shift that must be, though, eh? From like being like always marketing it as the cutting edge and always kind of seeing it as this cutting edge thing, and then all of a sudden like have that perspective of, oh shoot, like this thing is 6 years old, and
Yeah.
Still be cutting edge though. Like
that's
like
true.
you can. So when I worked at Alcatel-Lucent or Nokia, they have older routers that they still add new features to it that are up to date and still cutting edge. Just because it's established doesn't mean it's not cutting edge. It just means it's established.
Sure.
So you can come up with a new product for every single feature that you need, and you're never going to be able to sell anything because customers don't want to buy new products. They want to buy something established.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's a very quick question. So you're in customer pre-sales, correct there, Mike?
Yeah.
You know how that differs, if it does at all, from your like a pre-sales experience for a prospect? Like, what's it like working with customers, established customers versus prospects that aren't yet customers?
Oh, so we would call it, I mean, everything is pre-sales if a customer has an opportunity and a budget, and a plan to solve a problem, essentially. It would be post-sales if they have no budget, no interest in spending any money on any solution, but they still have a problem, right? And that would probably go down the route of a post sales or a services team being able to assist them, right? Somebody somewhere is going to get paid for something, but it isn't necessarily a solution, a new solution that they need to buy to solve the problem. Most of the time, the people engage with us, it's always pre-sales, but from time to time, an account team has an established customer and they're looking to do a roadmap call or, educate the customer on new technologies that have come up since they last met with them. So like our role is certainly to assist salespeople, assist partners, and assist customers. But customers don't come directly to us. They come to us either via the partner or the salesperson. So a salesperson can engage with us without necessarily having a specific, budget idea, date, deadline in mind. It may be that this is a part of keeping that relationship with the customer going. So we would do those things. We're not restricted to any size of deal or any sort of amount that way. It's a great freedom to be kind of disconnected from the compensation method of the sale, I suppose. There is, and that is, I think I sent that to you in kind of my notes. I don't work towards a commission in that way. I wouldn't class myself as being totally neutral in that way, but it allows me to be more, I'm not stupid, like, I'm not going to sell a competing product from another vendor. So I am biased in that way, but the ultimate solution that the customer needs, they don't tend to say, show me 3 different ways to solve my problem. They want you to advise them on the one way to solve the problem. So we would do that in the scope and call, kind of figure out, well, if you want to go down this road, it might, cost this much and be this complex. But over here, it might be cheaper or easier or better. And then you try and work out with the partner or with the sales team what makes the most sense for their customer, because ultimately it's their customer, not mine.
Right.
That I'm trying to help.
Okay, just to clarify, when you say post sales and they have a problem, that generally means a problem with the product that they already, or the solution they already own, and they have a ticket open or something, and someone's trying to help them with it, right? It's not like they're trying to solve a new problem. It's a problem with the system that they have. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. Yeah.
And you seem to cover multiple, like you have a team of solutions consultants, or I don't know what are they called at Dell, that not necessarily teamed one-to-one with account managers. You seem to cover
Yeah, correct.
okay, right, which is why you're not tied to a specific commission or quota for one specific salesperson. You maybe have a group quota or maybe some management by objectives. We don't have to get into that, but that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, exactly. We have the freedom to help anywhere where it's needed, essentially.
Okay, nice. All right, well, it is time to move on to the not so fire round. I understand you did some homework in order to answer these questions. So, Petty, go ahead, take us up. Take.
All right. Yeah. First question. So what do you love about pre-sales and sales engineering?
Well, I mean, that probably is pretty clear. I love interacting with the customer. The thing that was missing in my earlier career in IT was, I suppose, being the customer, but not helping the customer necessarily. I love just meeting different people, meeting different customers, and being able to find out. I have no idea what their problem is before this starts. I have no idea necessarily what the solution might be. And I get to, and not just the customers as well, also the sales teams. I have a huge respect for what the sales teams do and how they structure their organization to assist customers. So it's kind of you're trying to be helpful to both sides of that, and in no way ever be in conflict with the two, even though potentially the customer side has one goal in mind and the sales side might not necessarily align. Our role is really to make sure that those two come together nicely um, when we try and help. So I love that engagement with customers.
I don't think anyone's ever said that the sales engineer's job is kind of to bring the two sides together. That's an interesting perspective. I like it. All right. So question number 2 is, what would you change about the sales engineering role?
Yeah, that's a tough one now, especially in our current environment. We don't travel much, right? Um, so there are sales engineers who are supporting customers and account teams who go directly to the customer site. Well, at least they used to. Yeah, um, and and I used to be kind of a little bit jealous of that. I used to like the idea of the possibility of maybe changing my role and traveling more. Obviously, in the last year, that's kind of faded away, and it's always difficult to tell the customer we'll help you, but you got to bring them to us, right? So even before 2020 reared its head, I was doing a lot of stuff over Zoom and virtually, and it became really successful to be able to do an hour or 2 hours of a Zoom session with a defined agenda. I know what the customer is looking for, and to be able to interact back and forth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so much has changed in the last year with video conferencing technologies as being common and everybody being comfortable with being in front of the camera. Not everyone, but for the most part, if they're getting something out of the session, they will. So I've enjoyed that. I would like to get back to the travel. We used to at least support 1 or 2 events a year where we would leave our location. There's a stage involved, whether it's a small stage, a small audience, or even a bigger stage. I would love to push in more that direction, but not the only thing I do. I don't want to go from, at one point in my career, I thought maybe what I really missed was going to event after event after event, week after week after week. But I don't think that is what I'm missing. It's because there, I don't know that that's just a physical webinar.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily getting the interaction back and forth. I love being in a small room, having to make the first joke that breaks the mood, and then going from there and carrying on for the day. That part I really really love, and if I can continue to do that and get back to doing that in a face-to-face way, that would be great.
Yeah. I have a fear right now. So my customers are all in Ottawa, and they're 20 minutes away from me. And I used to just go in. I had badge access to most of the companies I work for, and just walk up behind a person, tap them on the shoulder, and say hi. My biggest fear right now is that even when this whole situation is done, and I'm gonna go and visit the customer, and no one's gonna be in the office because everybody figured out how to work from home, right?
Yeah.
And they're not there to cater to my needs. It's the other way around. But that is something I would like to change back if possible at some point. Right.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that because I've not been in that role, and that is an interesting way of doing it. And the successful salespeople that I've dealt with, I would assume that that's exactly what they used to do.
Yeah. Well, I think we'd have to take a different way where we'd have to schedule something with customers instead of just showing up at their doorstep and saying how they're doing. Kind of like what we're doing today, but through Zoom, but we'd schedule it to be in person. And that way they know they have to be in the office, and plus customers do want to see each other, right? They do want to go to the office occasionally, but is that occasion the same time I show up there? And so we just have to plan ahead, I guess, and be mindful of what the customers need versus my needs. All right. Question number 3.
Cool. Is there a book or tool or resource that you'd recommend for any other sales engineers out there or anybody looking to get into your role?
Yes, the scariest part of this whole thing was this question because, and I admitted to that to you at the start. I'm not a great physical book reader or even really virtual book reader. Before 2020 and all that, it was podcasts. I have podcasts on my phone, and I would subscribe, update, and the commute is where I got the podcasting done mostly. I can't work and listen to a podcast. I can't multitask in that way. One thing is being ignored when I do that. So now, I suppose I got the little earphones for my holidays, and I found I'm running more often and listening to my podcasts, at least when I'm running. If I'm not running with someone else, which I prefer, so I'm having to try and make time for podcasts. So that's one area. Yours is one of my favorite podcasts, and I will big up, and I already tweeted it, I did on Twitter, episode number 140, having the need to get better. I really, really like that podcast. Great conversation. Nothing anything really specific in it, but it was that sort of information in that podcast I thought was really, really great. Some of the ideas that came up I thought were quite new. There's another one that I only subscribed to today. I didn't realize it was actually a podcast. I was consuming it through LinkedIn. The Brutal Truth about sales and selling.
Yeah, George Burns.
Yeah, his LinkedIn he's the fellow who walks around with the camera.
Yep.
Down like a neighborhood or something.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. I love that. And that's the only way I consumed it. I didn't realize there was a full-blown podcast.
Yeah. His name is Brian G. Burns, not George Burns.
Okay.
Brian Burns. Yeah.
I really liked his one. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Tech Breakfast podcast. Mr. Bewley, Mr. Gates, and Mr. Cantwell. They're specifically kind of where I get my tech news from now. I used to listen to a different podcast, which I'm not going to mention the name of because I don't listen to it anymore. It was quite good. It was 2 hours long, but it focused mainly around one vendor, Apple. So I got kind of bored with it. The Tech Breakfast one focuses around the tech news, but it crosses all sorts of lines and barriers. There are 3 friends essentially that do this, and it's very. They did it daily for a while,
Wow.
but now I think they do it every 2 days or something like that. And it's very defined. Like they find a half an hour here and there, and they record it, so it's quite good. Outside of podcasting, I would say join a community in the technology or whatever it is you're trying to sell. There's probably, in technology anyway, there is lots of communities out there, right? All the different vendors have those communities. Join it. If you can earn a badge in it, whatever that equates to, do it. You probably think you don't deserve the badge today. You're wrong. You do. You need to fill out the application. If you fail the first time, get up and do it again. If you fail the second time, get up and do it again the third time until you get it right. Join that community because it'll be an open door to connecting with others, right, that are in the same boat as you. And that would be my last resource, would be if you can go to any sort of event, if it's run by the community or of your own company, even whatever, attend those events. Sometimes, you have an annual event or whatever, attend them and look out for who are the best presenters. It doesn't even matter if it's a presenter in a technology that you cover. Look and get advice from other people at the event. Who did you see that was good? Seek out that person and go watch them present. That to me, if you can see other people doing it good, it will pay off, and you can maybe find something and copy it and use it for your own interactions with salespeople and customers.
Yeah, it's that's what I do. That's pretty much how I form my style, by copying other people.
Yeah.
take this from this guy, take that from the other guy, and hopefully it's something coherent in the end.
Like that whole Newton quote, right? About if anybody ever sees further than, or if he sees further than others, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants or something like that. So yeah, take the best from what you see around you and make, I guess, and create the best out of that. That makes sense. That's good advice.
All right, we're down to the last question of the not so fire round. What separates the great sales engineers from the mediocre and or just okay ones?
Well, I'm probably trying to still learn that. I, I think it's just listening. It's having an ear. Would be my only answer there. The the salespeople who engage with me, who already know what they want me to do, are never really the best. We have our scoping call where it's before we meet the customer. We try and figure out how we're going to assist, and we challenge the account team or the salesperson or even the partner. Why are you trying to solve the problem this way? Does this really make the most sense? And if we don't have that conversation before we actually engage with the customer, if we just do whatever the salesperson's in a hurry, just get Mike to do that demo, it'll be grand. That never goes well, and it can be even terrible. Have you ever had like a sales team say, right, we need Mike, we need you to do that thing you do, just make it happen, and then they give you a 15-minute slot or a half an hour slot, and you're like, whoa, you asked for me to do 2 hours worth of content. you know you can't write the agenda. I have to do that. That's where they have to have that, I guess, listening and maybe trust. But you have to earn that trust too, I suppose.
Yeah, or collaboration based on what you just said. It seems that they're not collaborating; they're just telling you what to do, which never ends well. Especially, it's like going to a mechanic as a customer and telling them, "This is fix the engine, but the transmission's gone, not the engine's gone." So, but yeah, I like that. All right, last question of the day: where can people reach out and chat with you or meet with you? Because you seem to have a lot of great input that you can share with other people.
Thanks very much. I don't know. I'm on Twitter as HCI Diver. HCI is that technology I cover, but I like to go scuba diving, and I figured that I would create a Twitter account that matched my kind of personality. So I created that a while ago. Now, at some point, I'm guessing that I'm married to that HCI piece. As I said earlier, don't be married to a technology. And I'm going to regret that someday, so I might replace that. But I'm hoping to keep scuba diving. So,
Nice.
and that usually helps me with a joke at the start or some sort of opener with a customer.
Okay. Well, that's great, man. I appreciate you coming on all the way from Ireland through Zoom. Thanks for being here. This was amazing. I enjoyed it. So, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you both, and keep doing what you're doing. I hope you have a great year of podcasts.
Thank you. I hope you have a great year as a sales engineer. Hopefully we're traveling again. Bye. All right. And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks, Mike, for being on. It was just, he's been doing this for a long time, and his career path is not the same as many others. Not many companies have those demo SEs or demo engineers or proof of concept engineers. If you're in an industry that does that and you're looking for a sales engineering role, this could be a good step if you can get an SE role to begin with. So, because you get to interact with customers, you get to do demos, proof of concepts. It's, you're doing a lot of the same things. You're going to have to do discovery to know what to demo. A lot of the same things are going to have to happen. It's just you're not considered a sales engineer yet, which means you don't get paid commission. But you still work with customers. It's on your resume, which gives you an advantage over others who don't have customer experience. So keep that in mind. Also, that always be learning. Leave your ego in check. I know sometimes it's hard, but that's the best way to learn. If you think you know everything, then you have nothing to learn. But if you know you're still missing and you could get better, then you can learn a lot of stuff. And I'm done with this lecture. I don't like doing this. So I'm just going to shut up now. Actually, just a reminder, Leave a rating and review on your platform of choice. Take a snapshot, put it on LinkedIn or even Twitter at We the SEs. Tag me, although I don't seem to see all the tags on on the Twitter thing because I don't know why. So do that. Ping me personally, connect with me if you want. I'm happy to connect with a lot of people. Well, I'm happy to connect with as many people as possible as long as we're in the same space. So I'm not really picky. Connect with me, and I look forward to meeting you guys. With that, this is Ramsey signing off.